So I'll show you something, then you understand why this is a mandatory form now. If you're going to help a landlord prepare a residential lease, or month-to-month rental agreement, right? Now, in the past, if you click this form, you will just get this form, okay? But now, you click this form, see what other forms are also included. See what other form. You see, now you got bed bug. Do you know why this form is automatically included? It's mandatory. Any form that is automatically included is mandatory. Okay? Bed bug disclosure. And see what other form is mandatory? Tenant flood hazard disclosure, that's also mandatory. Okay? But we're not talking about those forms today. We are talking about this one, which is very, very important to a landlord. Rent cap and just cause addendum. This is throughout California. So in 2019, State of California passed a law that now places a cap on the amount of rent increase a landlord can have every year. And also, the Tenants Protection Act of 2019 places restrictions on when a landlord can terminate a tenant's lease. Before, it's so easy. You don't have eviction control, your rent control. If it's a month-to-month, what do? You either give a 30-day notice or 60-day notice. No more. You cannot do that anymore. So what happened? Let's take a look. This law is good until 2030. After 2030, they'll decide whether to get rid of it. Most likely they'll get rid of it or they'll continue. We don't know. It says here, please read the language. It says, with certain exemptions, landlord may be subject to the rent cap and just cause eviction provision of civil code, which means that there are exemptions. Certain buildings are exempted. Okay? Right? These are, why don't you sit over there, that way you can see the screen. Okay. It's easier that way. What does that tell you? What does the word exemption mean? Not every property is subject to the new law. That's what exemption means, right? So as a real estate agent, if your client asks you a question and you can't answer it, how embarrassing is it? It will be pretty embarrassing. Including myself, I have to be very familiar with the new law so that when your client asks you, you know the answers. You know, when you know the answers, they will be very impressed with you. If you don't know the answer, you say, let me ask my boss or my broker. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. If you really don't know, ask me. But it would have been better if you already know, right? So shouldn't we find out what type of properties are not subject to the new law, correct? The answer is actually on this piece of paper. You see, if I take you down, it's California law. Limits the amount your rent can be increased. In other words, it's throughout the state of California, not just a few cities. Throughout the state of California, your rent increase can be restricted unless your property falls into one of those exemptions, right? Okay. It says here, California law also provides that after all of the tenants have continuously and lawfully occupied the property for 12 months or more, or at least one of the tenants has continuously occupied the property for 24 months or more, a landlord must provide a statement of cause in any notice to terminate a tenancy. That means 30-day notice and 60-day notice are no longer good to terminate a lease unless your property is exempted. Generally speaking, the newer buildings are exempted. Any buildings that got their certificate of occupancy within the last 15 years are all exempted. That's the important part. This year is 2020. If a building was built in 2000, let's say, and 6, is that building subject to the new law? It's exempted. So don't give the wrong answer to your client.
The automatic exemption, or you have to get a piece of certificate.
Yeah, your answer next. In order, listen, this is very important. In order to get exempted, all of your leases must contain this form. If a landlord simply downloads forms from the internet, you know, sometimes landlords, they don't have membership. They cannot have access to the car forms. They simply download forms from internet. They don't have the right addendum. They're making a big mistake. What happened when they made a big mistake? Even if the property was built within the last 15 years, they don't have the exemption. I repeat, if you don't have this addendum in your leasing package, even if the property was built within the last 15 years, you are not exempted. So, if your landlord, you download a state of Nevada template and try to use it in California, you are making a big mistake, because by not providing this form, your building does not receive the exemption. I say the third time, if you don't have this rent cap and just eviction addendum in the package that you let the tenant sign, even if the building was built within the last 15 years, you lose the exemption. Who has a question on that? Is everybody clear? Who's not clear?
What is the building? You go first.
You have to speak out loud if you want to ask questions.
So what is the building
18? No exemption. Yeah, no exemption. Across the board in California. There are other conditions that also give them exemption. We'll talk about that later.
You mentioned that besides this form, another form we need to get is the occupant.
You have to speak louder. They need to hear you.
Yeah. You mentioned there's another form you should prepare. How to prepare the other form?
What do you mean another form?
You mentioned the certificates of occupancy.
No, what I mean is, if the property received the certificate of occupancy within the last 15 years after this law was passed, this law was passed in 2019. Within 15 years, the previous 15 years of the passing of the law, that will put us around 2004. Right? So figure out what date the law was passed, and then go back 15 years. Any properties that received the certificate of occupancy within the previous 15 years of the passing of the law, they will have that exemption.
You include this, let's say, you include this paperwork, you can raise rent.
Correct.
Ah. But you still mentioned the certificates of occupancy. How to get that separate form?
No, certificate of occupancy, when you have a home that is built, before you can move in, the city will have to issue you the certificate of occupancy. When it was first built, not now, but when it was first built. Every home, when it was first built, the city would have to issue the certificate of occupancy.
Oh, the city was already issued it.
Yeah, would have been issued. So it's all in the city record. All you got to do is to check the city record when they received the certificate of occupancy.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
That date it was 15 years.
It must have been within 15 years of the date this new law was passed. Okay. I don't remember when this new law was passed. We just have to go online and check it. Okay. Got that? All right. So roughly after 2004, if it's passed, if you receive the certificate of occupancy 2005 or later, then you are safe, right? You don't have to worry about rent cap and just cause eviction. However, you still have to check the individual city's requirement, whether a property might still be subject to the individual city's rent control or eviction control. You have to check the ordinance carefully. Every city published their rent control ordinance. You read the rent control ordinance, you know whether a property is subject to that city's rent control or eviction control. Today we are not talking about that. Today we're talking about statewide. Entire state. It's the same everywhere in California. That's what we're talking about. And then if it's within a certain city like San Francisco, Berkeley, even if your property might not subject to the new state law, it may still be subject to the individual city's rent control. You have to be careful. You have to read it. You have to check it. That's why we need to have training like that a lot. That way we can all learn about rent control, become an expert in rent control. In case client asks you, you wouldn't know, right? Okay. All right. Now it says here, California law also provides that after all the tenants have continuously and lawfully occupied the property for 12 months or more, or at least one of the tenants has continuously occupied the property for 24 months or more, a landlord must provide a statement of cause. Let me explain that. I explained to you there is rent control and there's eviction control. Rent control, it doesn't matter how long the tenant has lived there. But for eviction control, it will only apply if the tenant has lived there for a certain length of time. Now, if you are a landlord, you don't want to be subject to eviction control. You want to allow the tenant to stay there for longer than 12 months? Or you don't want to keep, you want to keep it to 11 months? Just short of 12 months, then you don't ever have to worry about eviction control, right? That's what it says, right? Doesn't it? If you keep the lease to no more than 12 months, if it's not in one of those eviction control cities, there is no eviction control. Let me repeat that. Generally speaking, there is no eviction control if you don't allow the tenant to occupy the premises for 12 months or more. So when you sign lease, you don't ever want to be involved with eviction control. Don't allow them to stay 12 months or more. I think this is not a very good law for the, well, it's a good law for the tenant because there is rent control, there's rent cap. But I think this is sort of a compromise between the landlord and the tenant. Because it is a compromise, a landlord can essentially avoid eviction control by not letting the tenant stay 12 months or more. Just limit it to less than 12 months and then there is no eviction control. You only have rent control but no eviction control, which is great. Now, if you're a landlord, right, you don't ever want to worry about rent control or eviction control. What do? Maximum you let them stay is
11 months.
So, yeah.
11 months, 364 days.
For example, for like the middle of January right now, someone want to rent a house. Then when you can start now, but any time it's the end of December is the end of January. Because sometimes when we sign lease, you can control that.
Yeah, that's what it says here. It says, you know, after all of the tenants have continuously and lawfully occupied the property for 12 months or more, or at least one of the tenants has continuously occupied the property for 24 months or more. The way it works out, I'll give you a scenario. Let's say there are two tenants, right? One of the tenants left before he has lived there for 12 months or more. But then the other tenant stayed beyond 12 months, correct? Is this property subject to eviction control? Oh, no. It has to be all.
Oh, okay.
Okay? I'll give you a second scenario. Two tenants. One tenant stayed for less than 12 months and he left. The other tenant stayed for 24 months and 1 day. Do we have an eviction control?
Yes.
Yes. So now you know how the law is applied, right? So to be safe, don't let anybody stay beyond 11 months, 364 days. Then you don't have eviction control. You may have rent control depending on how old your property is, right? Remember we're talking about the 15 years and all that. Now, if it's less than 15 years, right, we have no rent control and we have no eviction control, correct?
You have to let tenants sign this paper or this addendum. Otherwise,
You have to include this addendum. Otherwise, you lose the exemption, right? Okay. Now let's move on further. Rent cap requirements. Let's look at the rent cap requirements. Okay. All right. This is actually interesting stuff. If you can master this one, your landlord client is going to be very happy with you. It will show a lot of respect for you.
there's another, it's not very practical. Because if you rent, the landlord wants to maximize the occupancy for like 1 year, 2 years, 3 months. So this is for income property. But if you only let 11 months, then you turn over this. You have a time to find a new tenant. That's maybe you'll lose some.
Well, actually, it depends on your intention on this property. If you don't ever want to move in, then it doesn't matter if you sign multiple years. But if you have the intention to move in, That's one consideration. For example, I'll give you a very good example. Say, for example, you own a single-family residence, right? And it is a rental right now. And then you want to sell it. Let's say, for example, it's a single-family residence in, say, San Jose. You want to sell it. And you have used it as a rental for 12 months or more. Usually when you use a property as a rental for 12 months or more, and you do a 1031 exchange, you can, right? So when you exchange it to the next property, right? That's when it becomes tricky. Because 1031 exchange, when you get the replacement property, you're supposed to keep it the minimum of 12 months or more. Right? So that's another issue. So, but if you don't have to do 1031 exchange, you buy a piece of property, you're not ready to move in yet, you want to rent it first, right? Keep that in mind. If you rent it for longer than 12 months or more, you will be subject to eviction control. At that time, of course, if you want to move in, one of the just cause eviction is owner move in, so we don't have to worry about it, right? The law will always allow you to kick your tenant out because you want to move in. They always allow you to do that. What they don't allow you to do is to kick out the tenant because you don't like the tenant. They don't allow you to do that anymore. Before, if you don't like a tenant, you just have to give a 30-day notice or 60-day notice. Now you can't do that anymore. That's why be careful how long you sign a lease for.
I would say, just for the moving, but without the tenant.
That's illegal.
We're going to check.
Well, tenants can challenge you. The new tenants.
They will challenge you. Then there'll be investigation by the government. And then you get into trouble. Don't fool around with this law. Okay. Now, rent cap requirement says subject to certain provision of 1947.12 subdivision B. An owner of real property shall not increase the rental rate for that property more than 5% plus the percentage change in the cost of living, or 10%, whichever is lower. So that's why when you see the rent cap, it's actually not so bad because you get at least 5% plus the cost of living. So if the cost of living inflation is 2%, and you want to maximize the rent increase, you can get 7%, right? But inflation is 5%, 5 plus 5 is 10. So you can raise it up to 5%, 10% maximum, correct? So it's not so bad. So the rent cap law is actually doesn't hurt the landlord as much. Honestly, it doesn't hurt the landlord very much. But the just cause eviction could be a bigger problem. Just cause eviction is actually a bigger problem, right? Just remember that.
Do you have an official definition for the change in the cost of living? So someone say our cost of living this year is low, 1%. Someone say it's
Oh, it's publication. You go by publication.
Okay. Which differs by the area?
They have cost of living adjustment for different areas.
So I just mean if there's an official website or something.
Yeah.
There are websites that you can go to. Okay. Today we don't have time for that. Mind the detail. Next time we'll revisit that. If the same tenant remains in occupancy over any 12-month period, the gross rental rate shall not be increased in more than 2 increments over that 12-month period. In other words, you have 2 requirements. One is the maximum. The other one is the number of times you can increase. Let's say you can increase within the 12-month period let's say here, if the tenant has been there for over 12 months, the gross rental rate shall not be increased in more than 12 increments over that 12-month period. You know, most people sign the lease, the rental rate is fixed anyway, so usually you don't see situation like that. However, there may be, you can structure whatever lease you want to structure. You can have 2 increments per year or no adjustment for 12 months, totally up to you. But if you're going to have adjustment within the 12-month period, maximum you can only do it twice, okay? You know what I mean? Because most of the time when the tenant signs a lease with the landlord, they fix the rent for the entire year. That's usually the case. But if you don't want it to be that way, you can do it other way. Just make sure no more than 2 increments per year.
The question on your paragraph 1, the increase of like a 10% or whatever less 5% plus is that I can do twice a year?
No, no. You can do twice a year, but the cumulative cannot be more than those. Okay?
Cumulative cannot be.
I have a print of this. Lease to lease or month to month.
Yeah, yeah. I will. No, you have the video. Well, if your name appear on the email list, you should have a video. Carol, Cheryl will put the video on YouTube so you can watch it every time you want to watch it. It's there. Okay. But if you want a copy, I'll make a copy, give it to Cheryl, and then you just get it from Cheryl. Or I have Cheryl email to you guys, right? For a new tenancy in which no tenant from the prior tenancy remains, the owner may establish the initial rate not subject to paragraph 1 of this section. Paragraph of this section is only applicable to subsequent increases after the initial rental rate has been established. So as I said, if you don't ever want to deal with rent cap, you just get a new tenant every 12 months. Every 11 months and 364 days, you get a new tenant.
Let's say like if you get the
Right?
tenant 11 months, instead of 10%, I can raise it.
Yeah.
No, no.
New tenants, yes.
No. Yeah, if you stay there less than 11 months, then you can.
Oh, new tenant, it doesn't matter. You can use the market rate. You can use whatever. It doesn't matter. With new tenant, it doesn't matter. Okay? So I think that's what I said. If you don't ever want to deal with rent cap situation, don't sign more than 11 months, 364 days. Don't allow tenants to stay beyond extra day.
Does the tenants know about this?
They may know about this law, but so what? You're not doing anything illegal, right? That's totally legal anyway. 11 months, 364 days.
No, it sounds like a lot of, okay, for example, we start now, but ends in the middle of the January start this, but ends like December, the end of December, the end of January, for them all.
All right, anyway, I need to finish this. Let me go ahead and finish this, okay? We're gone over time already. Hang on a second. Now, just cause requirement. Earlier, you know, I said the old law allows you to get rid of the tenant without any reason if it's a month-to-month, right? Now you can't do that anymore. If the tenant occupies for 12 months or longer, now you have to have reason, right? What kind of reason can you use to evict a tenant and the lease? Default in payment of rent. If the tenant doesn't pay rent, you can end the lease. And then B says a breach of a material term. If the tenant breaches the lease, for example, if he consistently have illegal substance on the property, when that's illegal, right? You can get rid of the tenant, like marijuana. But be careful, marijuana now. With the new law in California, marijuana may be illegal, so be careful. But if they have like heroin, that's different, okay? You can get rid of them. And then it says committing waste. I don't know what DC says, maintaining, committing, or permitting the maintenance of a nuisance. You know what a nuisance is? A nuisance can be growing illegal marijuana. That's a nuisance. But growing legal marijuana is not a nuisance. State of California allows a tenant to grow a small amount of marijuana for medicinal use, like medicine, okay? But if it's beyond that limit, it's illegal. And then D, committing waste. You know what committing waste is?
Leaving garbage.
Yeah, that's right. Leaving a whole bunch of garbage on the property. That's committing waste on the property.
You can see waste on people.
If it's like drums and drums of waste on the residential property, you know there's a problem, right? That's committing waste on the property. Especially if they leak, right? Okay. And then you see E here. E here is very important. It says here, tenant had a written lease that terminated on or after January 1st, 2020. And after a written request or demand from the owner, tenant has refused to execute a written extension of renewal of the lease for an additional term of similar duration with similar provisions, provided that those terms do not violate Section 1946.1 or any other provision of law. Now, let's say you have the tenant that entered into the lease before the new law was passed, and the lease expired on January 2nd, 2020. And then the landlord says, hey, you are a good tenant, you're a great tenant, right? I offer you a lease with similar terms. No change in the terms, same lease. Would you sign it, please? And if they refuse, does the landlord have the right to evict this tenant? Yes, because they refuse to extend it, right? You see, say for example, if you're a landlord, you want to offer the same terms to the tenant and they refuse, they demand a different term. It's, well, unless you sign with me this new term, I won't sign your lease, but they want to continue to live there as month to month. As month to month. Let's say, for example, their lease ended. Usually when the lease ended, right, and the landlord and tenant does not sign a new lease, what kind of lease do you have now? Month to month. Month to month? Under the old days, before the new law was passed, it's okay. Then it simply becomes month to month. Tenants just become month to month. But under the new law, before it was a 1-year lease, and when it ended on January 2nd, landlord says, okay, how about we sign a new lease for the same terms, the same duration. Here's the lease, would you please sign? And I say, I don't want to sign a 1-year lease because I'm thinking of buying a home. And I don't want to be stuck with your lease after I find a new home, right? But I don't mind remaining as a month to month. Is that still possible for the tenant if the landlord does not want to sign a month to month? That's no longer possible. That's right. Because under the new law, or the old law, if the tenant does not want to sign a new lease, landlord can still end the lease by giving a 30-day notice or 60-day notice. Under the new law, landlord does not need to give a 30-day notice and probably does not need to give a 60-day notice. Okay? Because you know what? The lease just ended.
Say goodbye.
Just say goodbye. No, if I sign a 1-year lease with you and it ended on January 2nd, 2020, and it's a property that's subject to eviction control and rent control, ask you to sign the new lease, you say no. I don't have to give you 30-day notice or 60-day notice. I can quickly go to the courthouse, file an eviction lawsuit, and get you out. You know that? That's what happens with the new law. Okay? All right. Now, if on E, if the tenant committed criminal activity, of course, they can be evicted, right? And then G, subletting without the consent of the landlord, they can be evicted. And then they don't allow the landlord to go in to show properties or to make repairs. Not any kind of repairs though. It has to be emergency repairs. If they don't allow the landlord to show properties to prospective buyers or tenants, it can be evicted. So, if I'm a landlord, right, I got a tenant that is subject to eviction control. I can't get rid of them, right? That's one of the strategies I can use to get rid of them.
How?
The tenant that you're going to sell?
The sure for the new
Well,
renters.
you cannot, because you know why? You can't even show it to the new tenant, because remember, they have the right to remain there. You have no right for eviction at the moment. You have the right to sell, but no right to show it to the new tenant. You have the right to show it to the new buyers, but not the new tenants. Because in the old days, yes, the new law, there's eviction control if a property is subject to eviction control, right? Then the only way to get them out is to put it on the market, try to sell it. And if they don't cooperate, you can end the eviction control and possibly end the rent control too. Because once they're out, there's no rent control. Because once you put it on the market, when new tenant comes on board, you can adjust it to the market rate. You got that?
So question, so if you want to sell the buyer, the landlord want to sell the property, it's a legal excuse to
No, you can sell the property, but the new owner would have to inherit the tenant.
No. Okay. So what if you are the landlord? The landlord want to evict the tenant and putting market on the putting house on the market is one legal excuse to.
Well, you have to do it in good faith. You can't be doing a fake sale.
But they want to sell. But what if the house doesn't sell the price he or she wants?
Well, as long as they cooperate, there's nothing you can do. As long as they cooperate.
I thought in San Francisco, even the tenants want to cooperate, they will still stay in the house. But in that case, can I evict the tenant?
San Francisco is different. We're talking about state law now.
So I want to sell the house, can I evict the tenant?
No, because there's rent control in San Francisco.
No, San Francisco.
Eviction control, yeah.
Yeah. So no matter how, the tenant still stays.
If the tenant didn't do anything wrong, you cannot evict the tenant.
Unless the tenant don't cooperate for the showing.
You have to document.
You
You have to have good documentation, not just one incident. It has to be multiple incidents. Okay?
Normally, tenants will give you an excuse. Oh, I'm busy. I can help, but
You have to document it. You have to
But
document.
some documents, be careful, like some kids and senior people, those will have protection.
All I'm saying is that you need somebody to guide you, to tell you what you can do and what you can't do. Okay?
Is it still 24 hours notice or?
It's still 24 hours. Okay? So using the premises for unlawful purpose, we talked about that. When the tenant fails to deliver possession after providing the owner written notice of tenant's intention to terminate. Sometimes the tenant tell you they want to leave and then they change their mind. Once they've given you their notice of intention to leave, they don't leave, you can get rid of them. Okay? All right. So those are just cause. Now, no-fault eviction. No-fault eviction is like, for example, you're the owner, you want to kick the tenant out because you want to move in. You can do that. No problem with that. Okay? You just give them notice you want to move in.
Oh. I read in San Jose you have to give relocation fees.
Yeah, individual cities. So some cities require relocation costs. Not every city requires relocation costs. You have to look at the city law. Okay?
So if there is a relocation fee and you have that no fault just force, let's say the owner wants to move in, so you just pay them relocation fee and the tenant has no right to refuse, right? They're not going to fight for it.
They can always refuse,
But
but it's still effective.
So they still need to move out.
Of course.
Okay,
If they don't want the money, you just leave it there. If they want to cash the check, eventually you'll cash the check once they're out of the property, right? It says here, for leases enter into or after January 1st, 2020, or amendment to existing leases prior to January 1st, 2020, owner and tenant hereby agree that owner shall have the right to terminate the lease if owner or their spouse, domestic partner, children, grandchildren, parents, or grandparents unilaterally decide to occupy the residential property. Now, the owner always have the right to move in, okay? And they may be required to pay relocation costs in some cities, but they always have the right to end any leases if they want to move in. Say, for example, you sign a 1-year lease, and you say, I want to move in on the 10th month. No. You can say, I want to move in immediately after the lease expires. That's right. You can. But if you have no good reason, you have to continue the lease on the same terms, but the government allows you rent increase by up to a certain cap. Okay?
So if the lease signed for 12 months, the owner can't.
It's not year to year. 12 months is 12 months.
Yeah, so the owner can't move in
Until the first 12 months over, yeah.
Correct.
If month to month, you can.
Well, month to month it's okay, because month to month you still have just cause eviction problem. Except that you do. You still have just cause eviction, even if it's month to month. As long as how long they have lived there. No. 12 months or more. They have rent cap, right? Rent cap is there. Now we're talking about two different things, rent cap and just cause eviction. If it's 12 months or more, subject to just cause eviction, right? So if they are month to month, on month number 5, you decide you want to move in, right? No problem. You just have to give 30-day notice. Because owner move in, right? You give 30-day notice. And then on the notice you said, I want to end the eviction because I want to move in.
This is not. We provide you term of lease and refuse to sign.
You have to wait until the end of the 12 months lease before you ask him to sign.
Yeah, if they're on a month to month.
Month to month, you cannot ask him because it's different terms. It will have to be month to month. The new lease would have to be month to month. Month to month is just renew every month. Okay.
So why it's only spouse, domestic partner, children? How about like siblings and parents?
Yeah, the state law is different from city law. In San Francisco, sibling you can use sibling as a reason. But state, they don't include sibling, right?
No.
That's right. You don't have.
Cousin, I said this is my cousin.
Well, anyway, I gotta hurry up. I'm over time already. Hang on a second.
Very good. Use for form.
Withdrawal of the premises from the rental market. Now, if you decide you don't want to become a landlord anymore, and if the lease, it doesn't matter whether it's subject to just eviction or not. If you decide that you want to completely withdraw from the rental market, they allow you to do it. But it cannot be fake. It has to be real. Okay, so they allow you to withdraw from the rental market. In that case, you can end the lease with the tenant. Okay. Unsafe habitation. Now, if the government finds that the property is unsafe, right, and they have to end the lease because it has to be fixed up, right? You say unsafe habitation as determined by a government agency that has issued an order to vacate or to comply or other order that necessitates vacating the residential property. Now, if the property is unsafe, you need to end it. You need to pay relocation costs to the tenant. Okay.
Property is unsafe.
Even though it's tenant's, landlord's fault that it's unsafe, landlord has the right to end the lease. It says here, no just cause, no fault, just cause. If it's not due to the landlord's fault, though. So in other words, if the property is unsafe, is the tenant that's causing the property to be unsafe? Yes, the landlord can end it. But if the property is unsafe, it was really the landlord that caused it. Then the landlord cannot get rid of the tenant, right? It must be no fault. In other words, I'll give you a crazy situation. Can the landlord remove the roof and say, unsafe habitation, and I want you out of there? Remove the roof?
No.
No, not the roof.
No, they cannot.
That's what I'm saying. I'm just giving you an extreme
The
example.
owner's fault.
It cannot be from the owner's fault. Understand? Say, for example, I'll give you another example. If the roof is really old when it was rented, landlord just don't maintain the roof because the landlord wants to save a reason for evicting the tenant. Can the landlord do that? That's probably the fault of the landlord. Because you know why?
How do you prove it?
Because which tenant will cause the roof to leak? Doesn't make any sense, right? It's probably due to the landlord not taking care of the roof, right? But I'll give you a different scenario. Now, if the tenant previously changed the interior of the house and grow marijuana, of course, when they grow marijuana, they can be evicted. Okay, maybe that's not a good example. But then they stop growing marijuana. They stop that already, right? They stop. They no longer grow. Once they stop, right, maybe the landlord cannot evict them. But they have to reconfigure. They install sprinkler. They change the walls and everything. Now the house has become unsafe and is caused by the tenant. In that case, the government found out about the problem. The government gives citation to the landlord, say you got to fix that. At this point, can the landlord evict the tenant? Because the tenant caused it, correct? You see, that's why you have to understand this thing. Whether it's caused the unsafe condition, it's caused. I'll give you another example. If the tenant, for whatever reason, wanted to do remodeling of the house without the landlord's consent, because they don't want the landlord to find out about it, they don't tell the landlord, they just did it anyway. They have illegal wiring, illegal plumbing, and the city finds about it, and the city say this is unsafe. We need everybody out of the house before we issue permit to correct the problem. In this case, can the tenants be evicted?
Yes.
And the reason is because it wasn't caused by the landlord. It was caused by the tenant. You got that? Okay. All right. And the next one, it says intend to demolish or substantially remodel the residential real property. Substantially remodel means the replacement or substantial modification of any structural, electrical, plumbing, or mechanical system that requires a permit that cannot be accomplished in a safe manner with the tenant in place, and that requires tenant to vacate the residential real property for at least 30 days. If it is a very old property and later on the property has to be substantially remodeled and the city will not issue permit with the tenant still there, in this case, can you end the lease? It's not the landlord's fault and it's not the tenant's fault. Okay? But the landlord wants to do a substantial remodel. And according to the city and according to the contractor, it's going to take more than 30 days to fix up the problem. If you can justify that, you can end the just cause deeds. You don't have to, because this is one of the no fault. Okay?
Yeah.
It's one of the no fault actually. It falls under the no fault. And then the tenant payments under no fault just cause eviction. If the owner issues a termination of tenancy under no fault just cause, owner notifies tenant of the right to direct payment relocation assistance equal to 1 month of tenant's rent in effect at the time of the tenancy of the termination and shall be provided within 15 days. Now, if you're doing a no-cost eviction, you have to pay relocation costs, okay, to the tenant, and it must be provided to the tenant within 15 days. After you give them notice, you have to pay them within 15 days, okay, for the relocation cost. In lieu of direct payment, owner may waive the requirement of rent for the final month of tenancy. So if you don't want to pay the tenant, you just tell him, don't pay me the last month's rent, okay? All right, now because we're running out of time, I'll save this for the next time. You can read it for yourself, okay? I covered a lot already. Next time, I am doing one seminar on the same topic. If you'd like to hear again, you can attend. During our next month's monthly meeting, I will do a seminar on this for the public. So we'll have a monthly meeting to be followed by the seminar. Okay? There's just so much to cover here. This is a very big area. I've been doing this for 25 years, and there's still a lot of things I need to learn. Okay? Anyway, this is what I used to do for a living, so I know the laws very well. Okay? All right, thank you all for attending the training.